on a weekend which saw Spurs hit 5, claw back 3 points on both City and Liverpool, reducing the gap at the top to just 7 points. The question is, are we back in a title race? This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! 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 Tottenham!
Hi guys, welcome back for another hour of talking all things Tottenham Hotspur. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Acast and get every new episode direct as it's released. You can of course also follow us on all the social media platforms, that's including Twitter and Instagram, where it's e_Spurs. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/e-Spurs page. You can also catch us on YouTube, Pinterest, Tumblr, the lot, and for all the e-Spurs links, please go to our website of www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk. On the e-Spurs podcast tonight, we'll be talking about the 5-0 victory against Swansea. We'll be reviewing the CSKA Moscow trip to Wembley during the week, and not forgetting a huge tie at the weekend away to Manchester United. What a game that's going to be. So before we talk all things Tottenham Hotspur, let's introduce tonight's guests. I've got Jason and Ian. Chaps, how are we?
Very happy.
Yeah, very well then, Rick. Yeah, looking forward to tonight. You know, a lot to talk about.
Indeed, indeed. Now, as you all know, obviously hearing my dulcet tone at the start of tonight's e-Spurs podcast, Andy isn't on tonight's podcast. Andy is currently working on other e-Spurs media projects, and therefore I have stepped up tonight to host the e-Spurs show. So, onto the podcast we go. Obviously, we want to thank every e-Spurs listener that listens to us from various corners of the planet. They include no less than Neil Bowen, who's listened to the e-Spurs podcast tonight from Athens. Neil, thank you very much. We've got Devarakan Pay, who's listening to the e-Spurs pod from Pune in India. And finally, we've got Marcus Aurelius in Cavan in Ireland. As always, guys, if you would like a shout out on the e-Spurs podcast, all you've got to do is go to our Twitter account of e_Spurs. Tell us whereabouts you're listening to us in the country or around the world, and simply end your tweets in hashtag eSpursPod. And you can also get a mention on the eSpurs podcast. So for tonight, obviously we're reviewing a massive win for Spurs after a run of 1 win in 10. I think it's fair to say we all could have done with that weekend victory against Swansea. Jace, what did you make of it?
Well, it was a bit more like last season's Tottenham, wasn't it? I think Bob Bradley himself talked about physical intensity throughout the 90 minutes. So I thought the team was a little bit surprising. I thought after the Chelsea game we might well have seen Nkudu start instead of Son, which probably would have been the way I'd gone. And then, Son then probably scored one of our goal of the season contenders. But it was a much better performance all around, and nice to get a really good, confident win. Nice to see Eriksen back amongst the goals with a couple. Kane having signed his new contract in the week. What a boost that gave to everyone. It certainly finished all the newspaper interest in selling him off. Put all that to one side, and just a much better performance all round.
Yep, couldn't agree more. I mean, do you think also, Jace, very quickly touched upon it, Sissoko coming on, it seems like he's tried to, put a performance in there for Pochettino coming on. Did you see anything different about him coming on? Was there a bit more of a spark in him at all? What do you think?
I thought what was he on for, about 20 minutes? He certainly got one of his assists, didn't he? Got on the back of an excellent ball from Jan Vertonghen over the top, switched from the right over to the left to pick the ball up, so, prepared to cover some ground. And I thought a few of his touches, was just good enough. He obviously had the impact with the assist, but his use of the ball wasn't fancy, wasn't, you didn't sit back and think, what a wonderful pass. But, I mean, we weren't on his back as we were with the Leverkusen game, because he was constantly giving the ball away. So I thought it was just a solid 20 minutes and hopefully something to build on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jason, in previous pods, you've been accused of the team lacking some game craft. Do you think we saw that potentially with Dele Alli's penalty incident? What did you make of that? Obviously, it's never nice to see a Spurs player go down in a bit of a theatrical way. Obviously, as Spurs fans, we'd like to think we're a classy club. We don't want to kind of fall into that trend of buying penalties as such. What did you make of that incident?
Well, as I say, the game craft for me is something that we've got to improve upon. But that's knowing when to make a foul, not making silly fouls when you've got opposition players facing their own goal. It's learning to run the clock down, taking time out of a game. It certainly doesn't involve what Dele Alli did, and I'm a massive Dele Alli fan. I think after Kane, he's right up there amongst our top players. But it was sad to see him do that. And whilst it got us the start, I think that the thing that worries me most is that he'll get the reputation like Bale had with us for that time. And I thought Bale's was a little bit unjustified, but it's not the first time we've seen him throw himself to the floor. To steal a penalty like that was cheap. And I think, just referees will get cute to it, and there'll come the day when he's genuinely fouled in a big game, when we're 1-0 down or 1-1 with a few minutes to go, and the referee will wave play on, and we'll all be up in arms about it. But, referees will get cute to that, and he'll get himself a reputation for being a diver. Although, I will say, the referee in charge of the game, John Moss, I've said it again before, I think he is a horrendous referee. I think he's by far the worst referee in the Premier League, and I think that he's the type of referee that players, when they see him, think that they can con. They think they can get away with things. They think they can do the sneaky fouls. They think they can cheat. And unfortunately, we've seen it a number of times in a John Moss game. It works, and I think that's also part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Dele Alli is a gem of a player. We know how lucky we are to have such an incredible young talent, but obviously what we don't want to do, I think what we've said before, is take that devilment out of his game. And, for us as Spurs fans, I think we can all see there's such a great player in there, but at the same time, what we don't want to do is run the risk of his devilment inside of him creating these controversial moments that could potentially cost us in the future. But we'll have to see. Ian, you was obviously at the game. What was your thoughts on the game itself?
Well, it was interesting because at the start of the game there was a certain edge in the crowd. It was like, surely got to put in a performance at some stage. And then as the game sort of like progressed and we got more into it, their keeper Fabianski became more involved in the game. I remember him pulling off a great save from Harry Kane's header from a Kyle Walker cross, and then he kept out another searching cross from Kyle Walker a bit long after, and you think to yourself, is this going to be one of those games where we're going to press and press and press and not get anything? And then we have the Dele Alli incident. Now I've got a different take on this. I think that if you go back a few weeks to I think it was Arsenal PSG, I don't recall there being the Ferrari that over the Arsenal player that clearly dived for penalty. Now, we've seen it more and more happen to us where a player feels contact, and I think that maybe we should get a bit cuter. And I'm not saying we cheat our way to winning games and titles, but maybe sometimes you have to get a bit more savvy as to what you may or may not get away with. Now, I know with what Jason said that we don't want our players to get a rep for doing it, but what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as the saying goes. But so that was the first half, and in the second half, well, I think it was all Tottenham. I think Hugo could have popped out to the shop down the road and got a paper and a drink and still not have been missed. He won't have an easier game in the Premier League, and we just got the goals at the right time just to kill the game off. And I thought all the little cameos that came on, Sissoko and Kudu, I think they all added something to the overall performance. So it was great against a really poor Swansea side. I think I know we don't do the Swansea pod, but if I was a Swansea City supporter, I'd be seriously worried after Saturday's game. I think that they are looking like they are in free fall. But, you can only beat who turns up, and we beat them quite convincingly. Yeah,
I mean, I think the problem, I think this game itself was all a bit about how are the players going to react. It's not been a great run for Spurs, 1 win in 10. I think it's fair to say this is the game really where there was a few murmurings beforehand that there's a bit of slight pressure on Pochettino. I think up to now, I think he's got the majority of the fan support. Going into this game, I think it was a game that Spurs had to win. Do you think, Ian, that Spurs played with that kind of composure that they were playing for the manager itself, or is that a loose term to have made? Do you think the players were always fully behind Pochettino and this run was just merely a case of that we've drawn too many games and not converting those draws into wins? What do you think? Was there pressure on Poch on this particular game?
I think, based on what happened last year, I think there's pressure on Poch every game, and I think that he copes with it admirably. Now, I'm going to be quite controversial, Rick, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but some of the stuff I've seen on social media on the lead up to Saturday's game and even beyond, I'm just thinking, okay, you're entitled to your own opinions. However, people calling for Poch's head, Poch out, and all that sort of stuff. I'm really sorry, but you don't happen. If you've got those views, they're not views that I share, and I think that the team, we have to be mindful of the fact that, and it's something you've picked up on many a time, Rick, and that is we haven't had a settled side out for almost all of this season so far, and I think in God help, teams when we get Toby back and we get Eric back and everybody's firing all cylinders, because I think that we've learnt from last year, and I think that I'm going to Manchester United on Sunday, and I know I'm probably putting the curse of death on it now, but I don't fear the visit. I've got nothing to fear the visit for. I think that we can go there and get a result, and I haven't felt that way before. So, I'm more than happy with Poch and more than happy with the players.
No, that's great, and I think, like I say, our away record, I think, is one to be feared in the Premier League. We've only lost 3 games in our last 26 away from home, so why shouldn't we go to Old Trafford and feel a sense of, confidence and freedom being able to play there? I think you see with Jose Mourinho teams, they seem to be great to start off with, but as you've seen in recent matches, towards the end of fixtures, they just seem to lose their heads, and the amount of late goals they're conceding seems to be a consistent, regular fixture in their side. So, as you boys know, I'm a massive fan of Pochettino. At the same time, I think we've all said on this podcast that in terms of his selections in the Cup, that could be called into question. I'm sure we'll come on to that as we discuss, obviously, the CSKA game, but from our perspective, I think it's a case that we can only beat what was in front of us. I think, looking at the league this weekend, it just shows you really how important it is to kind of capitalise on other teams' results. We end this weekend, 6 points clear of United, 3 points off the likes of City, Liverpool. It's been a really, really good weekend for Spurs, and it just shows you just how quickly the league can change. And Jace, coming back to you, I think, is the word perspective a word that we should, really embrace at the moment? You look at that league and everybody seems to be dropping points. We saw Liverpool, cruising against Bournemouth, and they just simply fell apart. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to keep the 5-0 against the team bottom of the league into perspective. But then again, if you can't beat a side 5-0 and sit back and enjoy it, there's got to be something wrong with you as a supporter. I saw somebody tweet, yes, we won 5-0, but other than that, that was it, or that was it. And you think, you've won 5-0 at home and you get that type of attitude. I just don't understand it. We hadn't had a comfortable win. We've all said, wouldn't it be nice to go to Tottenham and be able to sit through the last 20, 30 minutes comfortable? And we were. And, the fact is, against the bottom club in the league, nobody else have put 5 past them this season. So, you can throw it and say, well, they're bottom of the league and you should be romping to victory. But like I say, nobody else have put 5 past them. So, Crystal Palace managed to do 4 the previous week and let in 5 doing it. So, let's enjoy it, let's embrace it. It was nice to see some players get back to form. It was nice, as I say, to see Kane get a couple, Eriksen get a couple, and hopefully the confidence can flow. Maybe we benefited from a completely free week in the build-up to it, and that's obviously something we've got to look at going further forward. But, enjoy the moment, and Saturday was certainly enjoyable.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think, like I say, the most important thing for Spurs was to get back onto winning ways, and I think, like I say, our next 5 fixtures, are all pretty much winnable games. Some would argue going away to Old Trafford a couple of years ago, you would maybe fear under Fergie, but obviously since he's left, and there's been obviously Louis van Gaal there, David Moyes, and even Jose Mourinho now, there seems to be a lot of work that needs to be done there, and there's no reason why Spurs can't go there full of confidence. I think from our perspective, like obviously Ian said, from me I look at it, we obviously haven't yet been able to field a team where we've had Lloris, Alderweireld, Rose, Dembele, Lamela, Ali Kane on the same field, and we're still really only 7 points off the top. You know, some may argue we've already had our blip. What do you boys think? You know, have we had our blip? Are other teams still to come? We saw City at the weekend, get absolutely destroyed by Chelsea second half. You know, should there be any reason why we can't be up there at the end of the season? What's your guys' thoughts at the moment in terms of title, top four, or is it too early at the moment to kind of make a prediction on that basis so far?
I think let's see how we get on. Let's see where we are at the start of January. You know, Christmas has always been a time when Spurs of old have struggled. So, you know, let's see how we get on into January, and if we can pick up some significant points and, you know, be within touching distance of the Chelsea, then I think that why not? You know, we would have learnt from last season. We would have taken on board that sort of, hopefully picked up on that gamecraft that Jason mentions, because, you know, they're another year older, and let's hope they're another year wiser, and why not? As a Spurs fan, you know my views. You know, the title's only not going to happen when it's mathematically not going to happen. So let's pick up some points over the Christmas festive period, and then see where we are in January.
Jace, what do you think? Would you go along the lines of that? What's your thoughts on the title, top four? What do you think?
Well, I think 7 points behind in a title race already is difficult. I mean, yes, you've got time to pull that back, but Chelsea is certainly looking at the form side at the moment, although, you know, there's plenty of time to drop points. I think, you know, the first thing is you look at the next place above you, and you try, and now we're fifth, you want to be fourth, and when and if we get fourth, then you look at the gap above you, and you try and climb it one place at a time. I think if you try and climb 5 places in one go, it's much more, you know, you can end up taking your eye off the little ball a bit, and then you're starting to say, well, we've got to take, you know, 9 points from the next 3 games. Let's just take it one game at a time. And Manchester United away, we've given ourselves a nice healthy gap between ourselves and Manchester United. I'd certainly be worried if I was a Man United supporter that the way the gap's getting for them, and it certainly would be a mustn't lose game for them on Saturday. But you know, with Manchester City now minus Aguero for 4 games, you know, we could possibly, we're 3 points behind Manchester City, aren't we, with a similar goal difference? So, you know, let's try and get above them first, and then if we can get above them, then we'll see where Liverpool and Chelsea are at that stage.
No, I think that's more than fair. Like I say, it's a fair judgment of the situation we're in. I think, I keep saying, you know, the Man United game, if we could get a win there, that would put some real distance between us and them. You know, 9-point distance between that kind of clutch at the clubs at the top in comparison to the kind of pack behind. I think that would kind of give us a real confidence, momentum. You know, 2 wins on the bounce would really, really, I think, you know, galvanise the team and just reinforce that belief that there's no reason why Spurs cannot, you know, go on to achieve the same as last season in terms of really going for this title. But I guess we'll wait and see. I just want to close this debate, lads, in terms of the game itself, the Swansea review, just on 2 players. Both of them in their time had criticism. Heung-min Son and Christian Eriksen. Now, obviously, Son's goal was, I mean, simply breathtaking. I was watching it on the box. Obviously, Ian was there. Jay's probably the same as me watching it. It was an absolutely breathtaking finish. And in the likes of Christian Eriksen, we're seeing a player potentially rediscovering the form that we all know he has. But all we want to see is that consistency in his game. Jace, to you first. What do you think? Have we got the shades of Eriksen back again? And what did you make of Son's finish?
Well, the goal at Chelsea, I think, certainly lifted Eriksen. As I think I said, that was his first goal from 67 or 68 shots at goal. So that was much better. And then Saturday, okay, I mean, the first goal, I saw some comments, well, you couldn't really miss it from the people that have been on his back in recent weeks. And let's be fair, we've all criticised him in recent weeks. But I think it's time to give the bloke a pat on the back, because he did have a good game. But the fact that, yeah, he was right under the bar and couldn't really miss, and maybe he did duck a little bit. The important thing for me was that in previous games, he'd have been standing on the edge of the box just watching it instead of getting in there. So the fact that he got himself to a yard under the crossbar and finished it off was fine for me. And, you know, I don't care how the ball goes in as long as the ball goes in the net. It's the fact that players are running beyond Kane and running beyond the ball, you know, getting into positions to score, and that's what we've lacked. And his second goal was just a really cool, composed finish. And, you know, I think over the next few weeks, it is the big time now for Eriksen. He's got that confidence up, and let's all hope he can push on. He doesn't have to be brilliant every week. I'm not one that thinks a player's going to have 38 great games a season, but over the next 10 games, you want him to be at the level that he was Saturday, 7 or 8 times out of those 10 games. And if he can do that, then we've got the Christian Eriksen that we all want back, for sure. And Son's goal, as I said, that's going to be on our goal of the season list at the end of the season, isn't it, for sure?
It was a fantastic finish. And Ian, what's your thoughts in terms of Son and Eriksen? Is Eriksen rediscovering the form we hope? And Son, what did you make of that finish?
Well, I thought the finish was sublime. It was one of those ones where, I'm sat at the quiet end of the ground, as the saying goes, and as that ball goes across, he connects with it and it flies in the back of the net, and you think, bloody hell, what a goal! How does he manage to achieve that? And then it's only when you see it, in slow mo on Match of the Day or on some other sort of platforms that you think, my God, what a great finish that was. And as for Eriksen, I think people know my views on Eriksen. I think he's underperformed for quite some time, and it was great for him to get back on the score sheet at Stamford Bridge with an absolutely sublime finish. And then the 2 goals, I wholeheartedly agree with Jason in that you have to be there to be able to get those tap-ins. And fair play. If he's now feeling that confidence to go across and get above Kane and get in the box, then that provides us with a platform that hopefully gets him some more goals. Because was it 3 and 2? Who'd have thought we'd have been talking about Eriksen on fire after and let's be honest, the lacklustre sort of start to the season that he's had so far. So fingers crossed that he can go ahead and as Jason said, 7 or 8 performances out in the next 10, I think we'd settle for if he can get on the score sheet or, provide some assists for some of his other teammates, and that'd be a wonderful thing to go forward for.
Yeah, indeed. I think with Eriksen, we've got a player that I think the most frustrating thing is for as a Spurs fan is that when he came into the side, when we brought him in, he was so consistent in the early stages, and you know what it's like with fans, the consistency and the expectancy, it rises and you want a player to perform every game. But even saying that, you only have to look down the road, I'm sure you boys will agree, Sanchez and Ozil for Arsenal, they're not great every single game either. So maybe as fans we also have to rein back the expectancy that these players will turn up every single week. It may just be a case that we might have to show a bit more love towards these players in order to get the best out of them.
And I will say, Rick, that I will hold my hands up and say that I've not been his greatest fan over the last month or two, Eriksen. However, if you look at the stats and if you look at the effort he's put in, it hasn't been through want of effort. He's ran quite a few, he's ran quite a fair distance in each game, and he's, and I've seen him press. Remember one, lung busting run he made away at Leverkusen. I think he ran about 60 or 70 yards to keep the ball in, and it's not the effort, it's just the application of what can be a brilliant player. And it's just, maybe it's a confidence thing, and maybe he's got back into it, and some of the other players are coming back that can support him in the way that he wants. Then I'll take that every day of the week.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And obviously this team has still got the likes of Eric Lamela to return, Toby Alderweireld to return. I think there's definitely promising signs that this could be, a real good foundation victory for Spurs to build upon in the weeks to come. So guys, we're going to move on to the questions from our listeners. Obviously we ask you guys to send in your questions to us every single week of anything to do with Spurs, and as always you get into us in your droves. Tonight obviously I've got some questions to put towards Jason and Ian. Jace, I'm going to come to you first. This question is from Devarakan Pay at Pav Devarakan. I hope I pronounced that right. He says, if at all Loris leaves, which I don't want to happen, Pickford or Powell? ? And I've also got John at JBear67 asking, do you think Hugo will be at Spurs a year from today? And I just want, obviously, it's a bit of a 2-part question, that, so I just want your thoughts really on both of those. What do you think?
I think Hugo may well be there if we're involved in the Champions League next season. I think it would be tough for him to go back to being a Europa League player, and I think he may well then take a much longer term view and think I need to go and win a title, or I need to go and win a Champions League somewhere else. And I think if that was the case, I don't think any of us would really hold it against him. But I'm still, I'd certainly optimistic that we'll be back in the Champions League next year, and hopefully we'll take it a little bit more seriously and more meaningful. Just maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe he looked at the Champions League this year and thought, we didn't really take it seriously, or if we did take it seriously, we were hopelessly out of our depth, and maybe that's just worried him a little bit. But he's not the type of, we know that from his character, he's not the type to go in, bang in and demand a transfer or anything like that. And I think we were all surprised, in fairness, when he signed these 5-year contracts after all the shambles that had been the Tim Sherwood sideshow, and yet he still signed a contract, and we were amazed then. In terms of where could he go in England if he was to go, I think the modern way that everyone has jumped on the Guardiola bandwagon and wants keepers to play with his feet, and there's certainly no chance Manchester City would want Hugo, because that's the weakness. But I think, as I say, I think it'll really come down to it. If we're in the Champions League, and then I think he'll sign a new deal. In terms of a backup or in terms of a replacement, Pickford's certainly getting excellent reviews from Sunderland, but he's a very young goalkeeper. And it's, I don't watch enough football from the continent to know the top 10 goalkeepers around the world, in fairness. I think Power's come in really purely because Luke McGee went out on loan. So, the fact that Michel Vorm's played in front of Pau Lopez this season would suggest that they don't really see Pau as a long-term Tottenham number one. I think their hope is that Luke McGee will come back and be able to push for a place. And then it's, it will be a question then is how good of it is Luke McGee? Is he ready to step up to number one? But that might be a bit too much for him as well. So I'm sure if Hugo does go, they'll dip into the transfer market again.
Yeah, I think Luke McGee at the moment is getting rave reviews on loan at Peterborough. He really is kind of, like I say, doing very well there, implying his trade. So it might just be a case of where they want Luke to go out on loan, do very well, and who knows, we might have a young goalkeeper breaking through the academy, which would be great to see. I think with Hugo, myself personally, I would hope he will look at the likes of Harry Kane and want to follow trend and tie down his future. I think he's made no bones about it in the past that he loves the project Mauricio Pochettino has put together at the club. So fingers crossed he does tie himself down. I think we've seen with Spurs, we've tied down so many players. It would be great to get Hugo down as well, because I think you would then pretty much say that the foundations of what Pochettino wants at Spurs has been tied down for the future. And then it does kind of stop these reoccurring speculation for players that could unsettle them. But I think, like I say, in general, Hugo always seems to have a happy demeanour around the club. He seems to know his importance in the dressing room. So fingers crossed he does sign. Ian, next question to you. I've got Regan at RJ Stevens 77, who says, with Alderweireld hopefully back next week, who plays in your side for Manchester United? Would you go in Musa, Eric or Victor? Now, obviously, bearing in mind we've got the CSKA game during the week, we don't know in terms of strength how Poch is going to go, how he views the importance of that game. What do you think, Ian? Who do you think he may opt for in midfield Sunday?
Well, I think Sunday, I think it'll be Musa and Victor, and I think Eric might get a run out on Wednesday, either in his current position next to Jan, or on Wednesday he might go with Eric and Wimmer and give Jan a rest for the United game. But looking at the actual question, I would go. I think Musa and Victor have to be my preferred two at Manchester United. I accept what Jason has said in other podcasts that if you look at it, Musa and Eric did fantastically well last year. But I just think that I looked at the game on last Saturday. And I just thought when we had, Dembele and Wanyama and Sissoko who has come in for some stick, but he did the simple things right on Saturday. I just thought our midfield just looked absolutely immense, and as we all hoped it would be, it looked formidable. So fingers crossed that can be what we achieve.
I mean, there's no doubt that Spurs we do boast such a really powerful, bullish midfield there with the likes of Victor Wanyama, Moussa Dembele, Eric Dyer, Moussa Sissoko even. I say Moussa Sissoko, we haven't seen the best of him yet, so it'd be great if we can get that player that we saw, that made us want to sign him. There's definitely a player in there somewhere, and let's hope this criticism from Poch, he can turn it around as a positive like we saw in the last 18 minutes of the game. Jace, coming back to you, obviously tonight was the FA Cup draw. It saw us draw an FA Cup draw at home at White Hart Lane to Aston Villa. The question I've got from Dave Ellis at fullback03, he says, will Poch have a good crack at the FA Cup this season? Club really needs a trophy. Now, we've been banging on this podcast recently in regards to the selections in the Cups, the causes for concern, how we say the game's about glory. Jace, what do you think? Is he going to take the FA Cup seriously? I know we all want him to. What's your own personal opinion on it?
I don't think he will do, no. I think, it's a nice home draw to start off with Aston Villa. I have to think the actual overall draw was a pretty poor draw, wasn't it? Other than the fact that I think West Ham, Manchester City and Everton, Leicester, and you wouldn't even really call Everton, Leicester a standout tie. Arsenal were away at Preston, Chelsea at home to, Peterborough. Liverpool got home to Newport. So there was a real shortage of really cracking cup ties in there, wasn't it? I'm sure all the TV companies will probably go for the West Ham Manchester City game, but we'd all like to have a crack at the FA Cup. I think as fans we do want to see it. We know that we need to win a trophy, as the questioner said, but I have the fear that Pochettino will see Aston Villa as a chance to play Josh Onomers and Carter Vickers, and we can understand that as well. And those players do need their game time, but it's those round 5, round 6. I suppose the key thing will be is where are we in the league come those times. I'm sure Indeed. If we're in and around the top 4, then that will be his number one priority. And if we happen to be away at Everton in round 5, then he'll leave out 4 or 5 of our best players. If we're, like I said last week, I think if we're 10, 11 points off the top 4 come round 5 and it was Everton away, then he may well go with a full side and understand his need to do it. I mean, in fairness to him, he has taken us to a cup final, so he knows the merit of being involved in a cup run. But of course, that was the year that we weren't challenging for the top 4, and I think the cup tie at Sheffield United, I think we went to Sheffield United, I think a goal up from the first leg, didn't we? And he didn't leave anybody out for the Sheffield United game that day. So I think that shows you the league is the number one priority, and if we fall behind in the league, then I'm pretty certain he will take the cup seriously, because I think he himself will know that he needs to either give us a top 4 finish or a trophy, and that's what's demanded of him.
No, I completely agree. I think the biggest thing for Spurs is when you look at the season before you start, I think it's fair enough to say realistically the most winnable cups for Spurs are the FA Cup and the League Cup. And I think what seems to have got fans slight concern with Pochettino over recent seasons, as we've discussed on here, is the selections in the Cup. I think it's fair to say there has been evidence that we haven't taken the Cups as seriously as what maybe we should have. And you can only hope that our recent eliminations in certain Cups has hopefully, you'd like to think, given him a kind of understanding that the Cups do mean something to Spurs as a club. We have often said on this pod that we are predominantly a Cup team, and although some fans may look at that and laugh, we've always been built up on the heritage that the game is about glory. So it would be great to see Spurs just kind of adopt that old approach again and go and take the Cup seriously. There's no reason why the squad we've said it before, we've got a great squad in terms of depth. You look at fullback, you look at midfield, there's no reason why we can't field a good enough adequate team, to cover the competitions we're in. And I think that, like I say, it leads us on to the final question of tonight's game. When we talk about depth, I'm going to come to you, Ian. We've got a question here from Dark at Go Dark Horse, the final question of the night. And he says, since our starting 11 hasn't really been healthy together all season, do we buy it in the January window? And if so, who?
Oh, I think that if we can get all of our squad healthy, then I'm going to be really controversial. And I know I've banged on about getting some marquee signing, but I agree with Jason's views on marquee signings. I think they're only decent if they come, we actually buy the player, not as a loan deal. And it's who do you leave out? Now, I'm going to say if we get everybody healthy, I say we stick with it with what we've got, because that team have grown up together. They had all those shared experiences last year. So I'm going to say, and I know I'm going to sound really hypocritical, and I apologise for saying this, I'm going to say no one.
Really? You wouldn't worry that without Kane, the lack of goals is a worry? You still feel confident in the likes of Lamela, Son, Eriksson contributing, Janssen? Are we putting our hopes into players that we're looking at? Vincent Janssen, for example, it's his first season in. Are we confident he can come in? Obviously, at the moment, from what we see at the moment, he doesn't quite look up to the task. Are you still confident there's enough goals in the team, Ian, if needs be, from what we've got at the moment?
Well, we had that last season, didn't we? And we were all, sort of like had our fingers and our toes and our eyes crossed that nothing would happen to Kane. Well, something's happened to Kane this season, and yes, we've struggled. And in an ideal world, it would be great to go out and get another striker. But I think Jason's nailed this before when he's turned around and said, "Who is there? Who could you go out that would add value to our starting 11 in January?" And I'm not sure. I don't know enough about European football to consider who's out there that would come. For a team that isn't in the Champions League anymore, and God forbid might not be in the Europa League come January. So I just don't know who's out there. The only person that in my heart you'd sort of maybe think of, and I know a lot his name's been bandied about, is old JD to come back, but that's never going to happen under Poch. So I don't know. I'm not sure whether he would go out and strengthen in the January window unless we were to see some significant outs from the current squad, and I don't know who we would ship out to create the funds to get somebody in, if you see what I mean.
I mean, from my perspective, I think it's fairly clear that I think Pochettino has kind of gone along the lines of, in the club, I think it's general say, no one's going to come in unless someone goes out. And I think we've seen over the summer the changes made. We've seen such a raft of players go out. I think we'd be very, very thinking generously if we're going to think Spurs are going to recruit 2 or 3 players in. I mean, my personal perception looking at it is that I still think we lack the game changer of a game when, the likes of Swansea, I think we can all sit here and say, that is a game we should be winning, although you've still got to beat what's in front of you. It's when we come up against the certain teams away from home. I'm looking at the kind of teams in the kind of the bottom half where maybe the game is going on, it's dragging on the last 10 minutes, you need someone to come on, get a goal, change the game. Have we got that in the current squad? We're going to be relying heavily on the likes of Christian Eriksen, Heung-min Son, Eric Lamela, Vincent Janssen. Have these players done enough so far to prove us that they can do it? And I'm not 100% sure. Jay, closing it with you, what do you think? Do we need to tweak a couple of things in January? Do you think it's going to happen? What do you think?
I think it's unlikely that we'll get the signing that everyone's going to be demanding that we go and make, because you just don't get them in January. I think, there's still lots of people trying to link us with Isco, but the type of signing you'll get in January, if you're getting players from those clubs, it's players that aren't really playing in those clubs, and therefore when you're bringing them in from abroad and they haven't played for hardly a game, and you're asking them to come in and make an immediate impact on the 5th of February, it's unlikely, isn't it? Let's be fair. Even the links at the moment with people saying about Jermaine Defoe. I mean, I wrote off Daniel Sturridge last week, and I'll write off Jermaine Defoe now. I mean, think about it. What on earth would Sunderland do without Jermaine Defoe at the moment?
No,
I mean, they'll
Yeah.
be either in the bottom 3 or close to the bottom 3. So, for Sunderland to sell Jermaine Defoe, you'd have to go and offer them silly money, because their entire hopes of survival rest on him. He's got a contract through to, I think, to the end of not even next season, the season after that, at 70 grand a week. I mean, Tottenham have got to match that offer. It's not just buying him for the next 6 months and then flogging him off to Bournemouth at the end of the season or something. So again, I think, it's completely madness to suggest Jermaine Defoe would be coming, as much as we might like him. I understand people wanting to bring a player like that back, or some people wanting to bring him back, but it would be a hell of a step backwards, wouldn't it, for us? Let's be fair. But without a doubt, if you sign Jermaine Defoe, he'll score more goals than Vincent Janssen will. But like I say, it's just a no-goer from Sunderland's point of view. I mean, come on, let's get real. So we sell Harry Kane at the moment. Let's be fair, Jermaine Defoe's as important to them. So if Sunderland are going to sell Jermaine Defoe, we might as well, Manchester United would fancy coming for Harry Kane even then, wouldn't they? Come off it. Unlikely to make those types of signings in January, and I think it's a case of we've got what we've got, and I think he'll try and improve the performances of those players. Would I like to see somebody come in? Yes, I would. But that doesn't mean to say I think it will happen. And, let's just concentrate on what we've got at the moment and get behind the players that we have got, because they're not bad players.
Yeah, no, I think, as we know, Pochettino's been brought in. He's, at the end of the day, he's title wins manager, but we all know very much he's a coach. He's there to coach the players, he's there to get the best out of them, he's there to improve players. You only have to look at the likes of Kyle Walker, Danny Rose. We're talking about two fullbacks now that are arguably, first choice for England. So he is very much about improving the players that he's already got at his disposal. And I think for that reason, that is why Daniel Levy, I think, loves Pochettino, because he knows that he's a manager that he doesn't have to invest 100 million, 200 million in like the likes of Jose Mourinho. He very much can work within a budget and can work with the current players that he's got. Our only, I think, little bit of a concern being Spurs fans is, and when you look at that league, is that everyone around us, like I say, every week is dropping points, and if we can capitalise on the teams around us, there's no reason why we can't be involved in, like I say, dare I say, top four, but even a title race. So I think that's where it's, again, trying to manage the ambition and the expectancy of what the club expect to go for in terms of going up that league. We know as fans we've got such a good squad, but at the same time we know that with a couple of additions we could really, really enhance certain areas. But I think all remains to be seen. We done our business in the summer. I think, like you said, Jay, it is a case of where I think it's case closed in terms of that. I don't see there being many investments in the January window. I think, like I say, we've got a stadium to save for. It very much is a case that Spurs have tied down the players who they see as their key components for the future. So we'll have to wait and see. But guys, we're going to move on now to the previews coming up. Obviously, we've got CSKA Moscow on the Wednesday, and we've got Manchester United on the Sunday. Ian, coming first to you on the game for Wednesday, the CSKA Moscow game. In terms of importance for you, is that a competition you want to be in? What's your thoughts on it?
I'll answer this in two parts. One, I want to win the game because we need to get this monkey off our back about Wembley. So it'll be good to turn up there, put a performance in, get a win, and we can all depart from the stadium feeling a lot happier about our impending tenancy of the National Stadium next year, should it happen. So there's that. Now, when it comes to the Europa League, why wouldn't you want to be in Europe? All right, it's not the premier European competition, but there is still an incentive for us at the end of it. If you win the Europa League, you're in the Champions League next year, whatever. So, why wouldn't a Spurs team not want to be in Europe? I don't get it. We've had some good nights at the lane, the Europa League. So why shouldn't we want that to continue this season? I don't get it.
No, I totally agree with you. I think for Spurs fans, I think, again, it's a case of, I'm looking at it, I think it's a case of modern day fans, some of them, I don't think we should ever take Europe for granted. I think Europa League, Champions League, I think as you see the draw progress, you get some great teams in there. We saw Dortmund last year, great side for Spurs. Unfortunately, the selection we put out there wasn't befitting to the occasion, in my opinion. So, for me personally, I want us to win the game. I agree with you. We've got to get this monkey off our back. We're there at Wembley next season for our Premier League game, so we've seen what the impact of changing the stadium can do to the likes of West Ham. We've seen Arsenal struggle when they first go to the Emirates, so it is very, very important psychologically that we try and adapt to Wembley, because it is going to be our home next year, whether we like it or whether we don't. Jace, bringing you in, what are your thoughts? I know you on the last pod very, very much passionate that Europe should not be seen as something secondary to Spurs. It should be taken very, very seriously. I presume you feel the same and you want to win the game Wednesday night.
As Ian said, we definitely need to get that win at Wembley. That's the really important thing. I certainly don't want to qualify for the Europa League with a draw. I want us to go to Wembley on Wednesday and put a performance on as we did on Saturday and get that really vital win that we need at Wembley and score the first goal, and hopefully that will help the atmosphere as well. And it'd be surprising. Everyone's moaned about the atmosphere, and quite rightly so, because when I was there for the Monaco game it was poor. But maybe if we were to score first and see a proper performance in the team, the atmosphere would have a completely different feel to it. So I think it is important to get that win. I think the next round, as I said last week, I think isn't until February, and much as I said about the FA Cup earlier, the more options we've got for trophies, the more options we've got to get into the Champions League, the better we'll be. And so let's make sure that we're into that Europa League draw, and then worry, the implications of that at the time in February. But the difficult thing to see is we definitely benefited from a free week, the week that's just gone. I think that's pretty obvious. Chance to get back on the training field, get back to basics, get a few players rested, and Dele Alli's performance, for instance, he looked a lot more like his old self, bursting forward. And with Manchester United to come at the weekend, you're almost having to second guess. Will Poch want to still be in the Europa League? It doesn't matter what we want, does it? It's what he sees, And with Manchester United away at the weekend, although obviously they're in Europa League action on the Thursday, so we'll have 24 hours extra rest on them. But it wouldn't surprise me to see one or two team changes, and Pochettino almost hope that we do miss out on the Europa League. But I think that would be terrible to have played. For us to miss out on the Europa League will mean 3 defeats in 3 home games at Wembley in the Champions League, and I certainly don't want to see that statistic at all.
No, I think I completely agree with you, Jason. I think any Spurs fan out there, I don't think any Tottenham fan goes into a game wanting to lose it, and if there is out there, I'd find that very, very hard to believe. I think, like we've said, boys, we'd need to get this monkey off our back in terms of winning at Wembley. I think Europe, to Spurs fans, I'd like to think majority of them would see Europe as still a symbolic competition to be in, regardless of it's Champions League or Europa League. Of course, we want to be in Europe's top table, but unfortunately this year it's not meant to be. And at the end of the day, the Europa League does give us another avenue towards the Champions League, and that shouldn't be forgotten. Looking ahead, guys, to the Man United game, obviously a lot is being made of it. I think Jose at the moment he's struggling at United, although they seem to be playing the right way. The fans are buying into his concept of playing style. At the end of the day, it is all about results, and he's not getting them at the moment. Jace, is there an opportunity there for us to go there and really impose our game on them? What do you think?
I think it'll be a difficult game for sure. It's never easy going to Manchester United, let's be fair. They're not in great form at all. And I think the key statistic for me is that Manchester United have covered the fewest amount of ground of anyone this season, and logically we'll be up in the top few again. So we've got lots of flack for being ponderously slow, but I think Manchester United have been ponderously slow at times this season as well. How Marcus Rojo will line up against us, I have no idea, because his challenge at Everton was horrendous. I think we've had a couple of wins up there in recent seasons. It won't be easy. I feel Manchester United are probably playing a little bit better than their results suggest, but their performance at Everton, even though I thought it was just that they played okay, they only had 2 shots at goal themselves, but they have been battering again, knocking on the door several times in their recent home games, and obviously their supporters demand a performance from them, so it certainly won't be easy, but there's no reason for us to feel trepidation going up there in any way at all.
Yeah, no, totally agree, and hopefully we'll have Toby Alderweireld back and amongst the playing squad. I know he was very, very close. He missed out. It looks like he failed a late fitness test against Swansea. Ian, do you echo Jay's thoughts? What do you think? Can we go up there without any sense of trepidation and try and go for the win?
I think we totally go up there for the win. I think that it's a big imposing ground, is Old Trafford. But I think that, that they will want to play against us. They'll want to impress the 70-odd thousand people that will be in there. And I think that plays into our hands because, we are fitter than them. As Jason said, we have covered more ground than them. I think we can impose our pressing game on them. And I think that, we will get the opportunity to get in and behind them and hopefully, get a couple of goals, without very little reply. So, I'm going up there on Sunday feeling quite bullish and positive about our chances. I've gone up there before and thought, let's hope that it's not embarrassing.
It's just 5 or 6.
Yeah, and although I do recall the great joy that coming back from that game where we won 3-2 and Bale and Dempsey and an own goal saw us overturn what was another horrendous stat of not having won there. So. I'm hopeful that we can go up there on Sunday, put in a performance, and as we've said earlier on in the pod, put some even greater distance between us and Man United. Why not?
I think it's one thing to say, but we're Spurs fans, we're always the optimists. And I think you look at our defensive record, we've only conceded just 10 goals in the Premier League all season, fewest in the Prem, joint second, fewest in the top 5 leagues in Europe. Why can't we go up there and use that solid defence we've got as a foundation to go there for a win? I think, like I say, if we can win up there, it really does put some distance between ourselves and them. 9 points at this stage would be something really, really great to grab onto. I think you're looking at the league at the moment, it's such an open, contested league. You just can't predict certain results and the way they're going to go. Let's try and end it with some predictions, lads. Let's start off with Wednesday firstly. CSKA Moscow. What are we saying, Jace?
We just don't know what type of team we're going to see, do we? So it's difficult. I mean, you talk about Toby. Will we see Toby get a run out Wednesday, or does he save him for next Sunday? It's things like that, isn't it? I think we'll beat Moscow. I'll say 2-0, but it's very difficult to make a prediction until we see the side. So I'm literally just plucking one out of the air.
Okay, great. 2-0. And Ian, what do you think for Wednesday?
I'd settle for a 1-0. A positive result at Wembley would be very nice. Thank you. 1-0.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go for 3-1. I fancy to kind of get a few goals at Wembley and try and end what's been, can't get away from it, a really shambolic and embarrassing Champions League campaign on a high. It'd be nice to go out with a win and still stay in Europe. Looking ahead to Sunday, obviously, boys, we're hopeful that Alderweireld will be back in the side for that game. Jace, what are you saying for Sunday? What do you think?
Well, despite what I said earlier, I think the one thing you've also got to think about is Manchester United is however much we impose our will on the game in Zlatan, in Mata, in Pogba, Rooney even, they have got players that can do something really special and can get a goal from nothing. So, you've got to be mindful of that. But I'm struck between a 1-1 or a 2-1 Tottenham win. I think if we're going to win the game, I think we'll certainly have to score twice. I don't think we'll go there and win 1-0. It's a balancing act. Again, I'll wait till the team news comes out, but I'm stuck between a 1-1 and a 2-1 Spurs win.
Oh, sit on the fence, Jay. Sit on the fence.
Well,
Ian,
sometimes you have to have that fence going.
Well, you do. Sometimes you do. Ian, what do you think? Are you going to put your neck out there and give us a result?
I was going to join Jason on the fence, but I decided that I didn't like splinters. So
no, exactly. Come off it.
I'm going to go. I'm going to go for one of Jason's predictions, and I'm going to be positive again, and I'm going to go 2-1 Spurs.
Okay, 2-1 Spurs. And if John was here, I know John, ever the optimist, I can imagine John gave a 3 or 4-0 Spurs, regardless of the 11 we're putting out there. So we'll just put 3-0 down for John, even though he's not here, but I'm sure he's listening. Myself, I think we're going to edge it up there. I've just got this feeling, I think if we turn up, and like we've said, boys, if we put our game on them, and I'm talking about primarily, if we can put that 44-minute performance against Chelsea over the period of 90 minutes against United, I don't think they'll live with us. I think their side there is very, very much kind of low on confidence. They're still very much playing periods of that Louis van Gaal kind of style, and as much as Mourinho wants to try and get it out of them, he really is still struggling to kind of get the side he wants to play. So I don't think there's any reason there we have to go with any fear. I mentioned it in the pod, we've only lost 3 of our last 26 away games, so for that reason alone, there's no reason we should be going there with fear. So I'm going to fancy us up there. I'm going to say 2-1 Spurs. So guys, that's all we've got time for this week. All that remains to do is to thank Ian.
Yeah, thanks guys. Look forward to seeing you all at the Torch on Wednesday, just before the CSKA game. It'd be good to meet up with Jason, John and yourself, Rick. If any of the listeners want to come and join us, then it'd be pleased to see them. So look forward to that.
Very much echo those thoughts. Like I say, we'll be in the Torch Wednesday evening, so it'll be great to see you guys. And Jace, once again, thanks as always.
No problem, mate. Can't wait to get ourselves to Wembley. And as I say, it'd be good if a few listeners come along and point out where we're going wrong, or even criticise me and Ian and jump all over our backs or whatever. So no, it'd be a good day at Wembley, I'm sure.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Like the boys say, don't be shy. Come over, have a chat. Be great to see you guys. Like I say, we'll be in the Torch Wednesday night. So hopefully on the back of, when we speak again, 2 massive, massive Spurs wins. So that's all we've got time for. Thank you guys, and come on you Spurs.
That everybody cherishes, and we won't